Hello, so we are looking at parabolas going through the origin today. Alright, so you should be able to identify a parabola that passes through the origin and then also be able to work out an unknown as well, so the coefficient of x squared when that parabola passes through the origin. Now, if you think about the basic parabola, so your basic parabola is going to have the equation y is equal to x squared. Okay, so no plus or minus a constant at the end. That y equals x squared has got a minimum turning point that sits right on the origin. Okay, so it sits right on the origin here. Now, you can have any parabola, okay, if it's of the form y is equal to kx squared, okay, where k can be a positive number, it could be a negative number, it could be a fraction, it could be a decimal, okay, it's going to have a similar shape to y is equal to x squared. They're all going to have a minimum or a maximum turning point, okay, depending on that constant, but that turning point is always going to be at 0, 0 at the origin, okay. So if you take a look at the diagram on the right, so the one in red, okay, is your basic y is equal to x squared, okay. Look at the constant before, the coefficient before the x squared, okay, so we've got a 2 and we've got a half, all right, we've got a negative 3 and we've got a negative x, so you'll notice with all of them, they all go through the origin for the turning point, whether that be a maximum turning point or a minimum turning point, but your graph is either going to be wider or skinnier, okay, so they are all of a similar shape, okay, and it very much depends on the coefficient before the x squared. Okay, so what you might be asked is to figure out what that coefficient is going to be. Okay, so if you've got the parabola y is equal to kx squared, it goes through the point P, which is 212. Find out what the value of k is and write down the equation of the parabola. Now, looking at that coordinate 212, okay, you know that coordinates are always of the form xy. Literally all you're doing is you're going to substitute that coordinate of 212 into the basic form y is equal to kx squared. Okay, so if we have 212, which is xy, okay, if we're going to substitute that into y is equal to kx squared, we know that y is 12. We don't know what k is, but we know we're going to multiply that by whatever x is and then have it squared. Okay, so we're going to have 2 squared on that, so you're going to have 12 is equal to 4k, which means that k is equal to 3. Okay, as easy as that, all right, nice and straightforward. Now, that makes sense as well, okay, because when you write down that equation, because that's what it's asking for, the equation of the parabola, so you've got y is equal to 3x squared, all right, that coefficient is positive, okay, it's a positive x squared, which means we must be looking at a happy graph, which is exactly what this is. Okay, so it's logical. So if you end up with an answer, so imagine you ended up with a negative 3, that wouldn't make any sense compared to the diagram that you've been given. Okay, so make sure that you do check your answer with the diagram that they give you, make sure your answer is logical. Okay, let's have a look at this second parabola. So you've got a parabola that's in the form y is equal to kx squared and it goes through the point 480. You're asked to determine the value of k and write down the equation of that parabola. Now, it doesn't make any difference that it's not got a diagram on it. I mean, you can draw a diagram if you like, but it honestly doesn't make any difference. All right, so you just use the same method that you've already been using. So we know that that parabola goes through the point 480, and you know that's going to be your x coordinate and your y coordinate. Substitute it into that basic format, y is equal to kx squared. Okay, so anywhere you see an x, you're going to put the number 4. Anywhere you see a y, you're going to put the number 80. So we've got 80 is equal to k multiplied by 4 squared. Okay, so we've got 80 is equal to 16k. Divide both sides by 16, which means that k is equal to 5. All right, so then therefore y is equal to 5x squared. All right, so you know that that graph would therefore be a happy graph, all right, because that 5 is positive. Okay, it doesn't ask you to sketch it, okay, but it's just bringing in some knowledge from sketching parabolas previously. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. All right, so you've got the parabola y is equal to kx squared passes through the point 2, negative 8. Okay, determine the value of k and write down the equation of the parabola. Now, again, look at the diagram, okay? So see when you get your value of k, go make sure that it's logical, okay, and it matches your diagram. So you know that the point 2, -8 goes through the parabola, and you know that's going to be your x coordinate and your y coordinate. If you substitute that into your basic form, y is equal to kx squared, anywhere you see an x, you're going to put the number 2, anywhere you see a y, you're going to put the number -8. So you're going to have -8 is equal to k multiplied by 2 squared, which means you're going to have -8 is equal to 4k, which means k has to be equal to -2. Okay, negative number divided by a positive number will always give you a negative answer. So therefore, your equation is going to look like y is equal to -2 x squared. And that makes sense because that coefficient of x squared is negative. You're looking at a sad graph, which is exactly what you've got. So this time we're looking at a maximum turning point. Okay, so we have covered parabolas going through the origin. It's a nice question to get. It's quite easy marks to pick up. Okay, so you're given the base. If you're given the basic parabola, which is y is equal to kx squared, all you need to do is substitute correctly, and it's just number crunching. Okay, and then just make sure that you state the equation at the end. All right, so we've been able to identify a parabola that goes through the origin. Okay, so it goes through 0, 0, and then we've also been able to figure out what that coefficient k is. In exam questions, it might not always be k, normally it is k, all right, even if it's a different variable that they use, method is exactly the same for parabolas going through the origin. If you need any more practice on this, make sure that you go on to the centralised Google Classroom for more resources.